Good morning.
Wait.
Welcome to our second Collectiv Academy training of the year. I am sending a survey in the chat. If you could please take a quick moment to take the survey, lets us know who is here with us and what you are looking to get out of the session today. In the meantime, too, everyone should go check out our LinkedIn and our YouTube. We have some awesome content with different tips, tricks, and articles on Power BI and the whole Power Platform.
So I was talking with Melissa, who's out in New York, and it sounds like they got 16 inches of snow, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, I saw people like digging out their cars in New York. I still haven't dug out my car on my street from when we got snow. Good morning, Alan.
Good morning.
Long time no talk.
Hey, the aggregate stuff was really cool. We followed up on that yesterday afternoon. That's something we're going to use.
And you know, the crazy thing is we're talking about performance with modeling and everything. Power BI came out with a blog yesterday that's all about best practices for your model for performance. So,
share away, please.
Yep, I'll definitely be sharing that with you.
Well,
for
good.
anyone that just joined, if you could please take a minute to take the survey that I sent in the chat. It helps us get to know who's here with us and what you are excited to learn about. Also, in the meantime, we will get started soon, but you should go check out our LinkedIn and our YouTube. We post daily with interesting articles, blogs, videos, and updates about Power BI and the whole Power Platform. Good morning. For anyone that just joined, I'm sending out a survey in the chat. If you could please take a quick moment to take that and we can understand who's here and what you would like to learn.
Probably get started in a few minutes. We'll wait for a few more people to file in and we'll kick things off.
Good morning. We will get started very soon, but in the meantime, if you could please take a quick moment to take the survey, that would be awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Jamie.
There we go.
Good morning. For anyone that just joined, I am sending a survey in the chat. If you could please take a quick moment to fill that out, that would be awesome. Thank you. We will get started here in the next few minutes. Here are some links to follow our LinkedIn and YouTube to get more awesome tips and tricks and some in-depth tutorials on Power BI and the Microsoft Data Stack.
Awesome. We're going to get started in 1 minute here, everybody. So just sit tight and we'll kick things off in 1 minute.
And at any time during the session, if you wanted to just put your questions in the chat, we can ask during the presentation, and then we'll have time for questions at the end.
All right, great. So why don't we go ahead and kick things off here? I know we're about 3 minutes past, but we're going to do a quick introduction. So hi, everybody. My name is Greg Gillespie. I'm a principal here at Collectiv. Real excited to have everybody here on the call with us today. This is our second Collectiv Academy for the year. We just kicked things off last week with a Power BI crash course. Today's going to be a little bit different. Today we're going to be talking about forecasting, planning, and budgeting from within Power BI. So many of you may know that you can visualize data in Power BI, but did you know you can actually budget, forecast, and plan from within the same Power BI report? So a really exciting thing here that we're going to show you. I'm really pumped up and to kind of show you what this is all about here during our 1 hour session. So a little bit about us before we kick things off. So Collectiv is a data analytics consulting firm that is based out of Chicago, Illinois, and we have consultants that are across all over the U.S. Excuse me 1 second here. All right, that's better. Sorry about that, everybody. Was losing my voice there for a second. Okay, so what I was briefly saying there is we have consultants located across North America and Canada that help individuals in the Power BI, Power Apps, Power Automate, and that usually what comes along with all of those different types of services are different Azure services like Azure Data Factory, Azure Databricks, Synapse, SQL, Data Lakes, and then getting all the way into Azure AI and ML. A lot of times that we also specialize with financial reporting, FP&A practices, which is what we're actually going to be showing you today, which is the ability to budget, forecast, and plan from within Power BI. Now, a lot of times when organizations, when they actually kick things off with maybe a new budgeting platform, a new forecasting platform, they may not actually know how to get started. So that's one way we actually help organizations is we help them put that strategy in place, help them understand how they can use new tools that we're going to be showing you today, like Power BI and the budgeting and forecasting and planning systems, and how they can implement that throughout their organization. So implementing these types of tools and then bringing that into an actual project within the organization, to where we might actually start with replacing some Excel spreadsheets that you're using for just reporting, or replacing some Excel spreadsheets that you're using for forecasting, budgeting, and planning. We'll do that in a project type of consulting offering. And then at the end of the day, we also help organizations with just simple consulting as a service, to where maybe we've rolled that project out for you and now you need post-project support. Maybe you have a BI team already in-house that takes care of all of your reporting, maybe all of your budgeting and planning solutions, but they need to bounce ideas off of each other, bounce ideas off of someone from time and time again. We can be that support for you as well. But with that said, I don't want to take too much time spending, talking about exactly what we have to offer. I want to show you what we have to offer. And I'm going to turn this over now to Darren, who's going to take us through the actual fun stuff. That's actually showing you how to budget and plan from within Power BI. So that said, Darren, the floor is yours. So take it away.
Awesome stuff. Thank you, Greg. I'm going to try and share a screen here, make technology work, which is the most difficult part of the budgeting and forecasting today. Just give me a shout if you can see my slides here.
Yep, we can see them.
Okay, good stuff. Well, good morning. My name is Darren. Welcome to everybody out there. So I'm coming into this with two assumptions: that you, first of all, somewhat like Power BI, and in your organization, you either have Power BI and are using it, or you're seriously thinking about it. This would be applicable, generally if you're not in those categories, but those are the two assumptions I'm coming to this with this morning. And in most organizations, you'll find that you've got many different data sources. So you can see on screen here, there's, Oracle, SAP, you may have some smaller ERP or accounting systems. Certainly outside of the financial realm, you'll have inventory systems, sales, marketing, and a whole host of other things. And of course, when we're looking at Power BI, one of the reasons why you are working with Power BI, can somebody mute everybody's line, please? One of the reasons why you are going down your Power BI journey, or thinking of going down your Power BI journey, is to really gain insights from all of those different types of data sources. And really kind of where most organizations start off is that they've got different reporting solutions for different point reasons. So they may have a particular report writer that they got with their ERP or accounting system that they're now using. For the inventory system, they've got some other spreadsheet, maybe reports. For other systems, their IT department might have created some reporting, from programming that from scratch for themselves. To basically get all of those insights, all those kind of key elements to run your business from a reporting and analytics perspective. And generally what we see in the marketplace is that, good old Excel comes out of the box and starts to glue all of those things together, because it's not just the reporting from your ERP system, accounting system, and then in isolation that you want to see your reporting from your inventory system. You want to bring those together to make management decisions. So Excel is a great tool to bring that, and for the last X number of decades, Excel has been the de facto tool to do that. And really what Power BI has brought into the fray is an easier way to combine all of that reporting, all of those analytics, all those differing insights needs from all different departments, all different levels within the organization into one reporting platform and layer. And that's really by unifying the whole kind of stack there. So because it's not just about the Power BI side of things that you've seen on a lot of these trainings where it's all the nice visuals and the flashy things. It's really about having a cohesive single version of the truth in terms of how you model the data, how you bring the data together. Because as you know, when you're bringing data from your accounting system, bringing data from your marketing system, for some reason, the products aren't the same code, or, something is awry there needs to be some transformation and cleansing and massaging of that data to make it make all sense together. And then whether that's coming from a single data warehouse, a data lake house, doesn't really matter. You've got this cohesive way of single version of truth of your data, single version of truth of your KPIs and the way you measure and calculate things. And then finally, you can present it in a beautiful reporting mechanism such as Power BI. And really, when we're talking about good old budgeting and planning and forecasting, and again, when I'm talking about budgeting, forecasting, and planning, I'm not just talking about financial plans or your annual budget that your finance department makes you do every single year. I'm talking about any type of interactivity with your data, any type of planning. So one of the things that we deal with a lot is organizations where maybe they've got an inventory system and now they want to do planning, but they're doing it in Excel or they're doing it in a proprietary solution. And again, these same paradigms come true in terms of trying to get a cohesive way of doing planning, budgeting, forecasting, and modeling of your data as well. And you may have, again, sort of Excel spreadsheets. You may have specific point solutions that came with that tool, which are proprietary, and you have to do everything in that tool. You may have built out a particular planning solution by programming it, or your IT department has, etc. But invariably what we see is when you're looking at it from a management point of view, trying to make decisions around that plan, budget, etc. So what if we increase sales by 50%? How does that affect my P&L? More importantly, how does it affect my supply chain? Especially nowadays with the COVID, different factors with COVID, my supply chain has been affected. How's that going to affect my financials? How's that going to roll into other parts of my business? What's my inventory looking like? How can we kind of flex that and see and plan for these scenarios in a better fashion in the future? And invariably, Excel is brought out because it's the most commonly known tool out there, and it kind of plugs all of those things together. But it's not a particularly robust way of doing things. And again, now with the developments in Power BI, what you're able to do is get that nice, sleek, single version of truth for your planning, budgeting, forecasting, modeling of data, as well as your analytics and reporting as well. By having that single version of truth of data, single version truth of the way you're calculating, so your allocation logic. Okay, if you're in a retail business, okay, summer's probably going to be a more productive season for you. So how can we add that seasonality into it, etc. So single way of calculating things, single way of doing planning. And then now, because you can do all that in the Power BI environment, you can have one interface which is controlled through security and has all those nice control mechanisms over it. But your users just see a Power BI screen, and whether they're getting their analytics and making management decisions upon that, or whether they're entering their annual budgets, doing a reforecast, a rolling forecast, doing some strategic planning for the next 5 years, they can do it all within that beautiful Power BI interface, all on the Microsoft stack as well. So that's kind of the basic intro to kind of what we're going to be showing you today. And we're going to take you through some examples of that, some simple examples. They can get very complicated. What you're going to be seeing is the ability also to create exactly the planning process or budgeting processes that you have in your business. It's not trying to take those processes and now fit it into a tool, because that's the way the tool works. This is really, you can build it out using your Power BI DAX language, with your Power BI visuals, etc. You can build out any type of business process within the Power BI environment. And just before we get on to that, this then unlocks a whole other avenue for you, because really we don't see Power BI now being just an analytics tool. It's, of course, we're talking about it being a planning, budgeting, forecasting tool, but it's really a tool to build out any type of business process. And that's really the way that we encourage our customers to look at it, because once you've dealt with the analytics, once you've dealt with the planning, there's so many other applications, because now you can read data, you can write commentary, you can build out any type of logic using Power Automate, which is part of the Power Platform family. Using Power Apps, you can create other interactions, create workflows, approvals, automation, RPA. So really, we haven't seen a use case where you can't bring all of these sort of Microsoft components together to really map out any type of business process in your organization. So with that said, I'm going to stop my sharing here, and then we're going to jump back to Greg, and who will show you some examples of what we're talking about.
Awesome. All right, thanks for that, Darren. That was great. Can you confirm you can see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Great. So what we're looking at here, everybody, this is just a simple sales planning screen or dashboard that you might have. But the difference is what we actually have on here is actually a write back matrix. So this actually looks like a normal Power BI matrix where you can actually see your sales by a specific time frame. In this scenario, it's season, but you might also think of this as looking at your data by, year, quarter, month. And then on the left here, we actually have the gender of the actual product line, and then we'll drill down and actually show you these different types of product lines, as well as the sales reps that are associated with their different with the different sales dollars that we have budgeted for. But what I'm going to show you now is I'm going to go to a specific scenario. So right now I'm looking at a key account here, and I'm looking at my scenario of forecast. So I can look at all different types of scenarios. So in the budgeting forecasting world, we have, we can look at goals, we can look at our plan. In this instance, I'm actually looking at forecast, but I'm going to focus specifically on 2020. And what that's going to do is, like normal Power BI functionality, it filters my data down accordingly. But now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to budget accordingly for my men's, for the gender for men's category. I'm going to go ahead and just do a top-down budgeting process where I'm just going to change this to 10 million. What I'm actually doing here is I'm actually budgeting now for 10 million. And what you can see is, as I refresh my data, right here on the left, on the right, I'm sorry, my forecast, you see how that rose now to 10 million. I can do that one more time, and I can just change that to 50. And again, now you can see how my data changes dynamically just by writing back my data from this Power BI matrix here that we're viewing. Now, one more cool thing about this is there's a couple different ways we can actually do this. So that was a top-down approach. We can do actually a bottoms-up, to where if I want to budget accordingly by line now and I just go to outerwear, what I can do now is I can change, let's say I want to change outerwear from 14 million. I want to change that to actually to a 50 million amount. When I do that and I go ahead and apply those changes, again, you can now see once again how our data changes, and then it changes our data accordingly, and that we just did a bottoms up approach there. Any questions from what we just did here? Darren, anything to add with what I may have shown?
Yeah, so as you've seen, when you enter data here in the visuals which are connected to that matrix on the left-hand side, everything is updated in real time. So that looks fair, the way Greg did that, it looks fairly simple. But what you have to remember is it's been written back to a SQL Server database. That's been updating any logic that you've created in your Power BI model, etc. And then updated the all associated parts of that data model, and then obviously this Power BI report and any other Power BI reports that it affects. So really, you can do a change, let's say at total sales, or total revenues, and drive that change down through all of the elements, all of the hierarchy, right down to the most granular level of detail. So it's a very powerful way of doing modeling, what if analysis, but also, you know, budgeting and forecasting as well. So and this is, again, you know, every organization is going to have a different hierarchy, a different structure, whether you're, you know, in this case, we're doing this for kind of this clothing retailer. It doesn't matter what your scenario is, whether it's sales data, marketing data, revenue data, you know, inventory, etc. It can be applicable to this. So a very powerful way of entering data directly in Power BI. Do you have any questions coming up?
I don't see anything in the chat, but one thing I do want to mention here is what I just did is I just budgeted 50 million for our sales rep 27 here. Another visual that's down here on the bottom is something we call our comments write back visual. So what I did was I actually, you know, upped our budget to 50 million. And what I can do is, let's say I need to add a comment or some comment in there to let others know who maybe is approving my budget that I increase this. Maybe I say increasing budget to 50 mil because of new stores. What I'll do is say, okay, I'll hit save. And then what that's actually going to do is that's actually going to show my new comment here. So where if my manager actually drills down and actually wants to see, you know, what is making up this 130 million, maybe we're 50 million above what we expected, they can actually drill down and go down to this actual comment and say, well, okay, sales rep 27, increase it because we're getting new stores open. So again, a way to collaborate and show what's actually going on inside of that report.
Yeah, and that's a really important capability. I'm sure you've been in a planning scenario whereby you know, you've handed in your plan for the year, the forecast, etc., and then people are coming back to you and asking you questions around it. This can eliminate that, so you can add that narrative and that explanation, and really you could add as much explanation as you wish to that, so it gives your numbers some credence and some narrative to it. But also, as maybe the owner of the forecast or the person who's putting this out to collate those forecasts or plans, you could even force people to do that. So let's say if Bob was entering a number and it exceeded a particular tolerance, you know, he slipped on his keyboard and entered, you know, 5 million instead of 1 million. The system could pick up on that and go, hey, okay, this exceeds a particular tolerance. Please enter a comment, or even, you know, send a notification using Microsoft Power Automate to the manager to say, hey, look, there's something odd going on here. So what we're trying to do here is eliminate a lot of those manual, menial, repetitive processes that currently happen if you're doing this in Excel or in some other offline proprietary system. Because you're just doing this all in Power BI and using all of the capabilities of Power BI and the Power Platform family, you can now put a lot more smarts into it. So now, you know, that particular aspect of it can be completely automated, or you can just be notified of kind of the exceptions or the things that look odd, that sort of thing, by the system, instead of you going trawling through lots of different reports and spreadsheets and things like that and trying to find those yourselves.
Great. So there were two questions that came through. So we'll start with the first one. That is, which visual is that editable? Is it normal matrix or is it custom visual? This is actually a custom visual that we're in here. So this isn't the normal Power BI matrix, but it is a custom visual that you can download from the App Store. And then the second question, sorry, Darren, were you going to say something there?
Yeah, I was just going to say, and this is another thing that I think we find with a lot of Power BI users. They're obviously aware of everything that appears in that sort of top right when you're in Power BI desktop with all the standard Microsoft visual. But there's thousands of visuals out there. There's a whole Power BI marketplace where there are, you know, visuals to satisfy any particular niche need that you probably have out there. You could even, and also the visualization engine is open source. So if you really want to create your own visual to your very specific needs, you can do that because Microsoft opened all of that up to you. And that's why developers have been able to create these custom visuals for, you know, really interesting things like this write back aspect of it. Some of these visuals a lot of them are free on the marketplace. Some of them are paid, but generally, you know, to the cost to kind of do these sort of things in comparison to the time saving, as well as the fact that you can just do it in Power BI, is pretty negligible.
Great. And then we had another question came in from Mason. He said, so there are abilities to accept changes or not. And I think you alluded to a little bit of that, Darren, but can you maybe explain? So, or I guess I'll kick it off. There are different types of process approval flows that you can work into this. And some of that can be done through the visual you're seeing here. And other ways that we do that is actually through, Power Automate and Power Apps, where we can actually set approvals based upon what has been written back, to where you basically have different thresholds, like Darren was mentioning earlier. Hey, don't allow sales to go over 150 million, or don't allow my revenue or my cost to go above or below a certain threshold. And if it does, or if that needs approved, it gets submitted to your manager through a Power Automate approval or some other form or mechanism that's utilized there.
Yeah, so there's a couple of aspects to that question. So first of all, you can control who and where anybody is able to write back data. So for example, if you want to show them say an actuals column next to your plan, obviously you want them to enter it into the plan and not enter it into the actuals, of course. That's all controlled through your row level Power BI row level security. Lock that down, make sure nobody can touch that. And then even there you've got more granular capability. So if I'm only allowed to see total revenues, but I'm only allowed to enter data into my region, then you can control it right down to effectively that single cell level, so it's through security. Then there's kind of the kind of hard-coded, let's say, capability of determining kind of that write back. So you could set up some DAX logic on the back end that means that if that anything's entered over 2 million, it just has to be rejected and they can't write that back, because that's never going to happen. And then, as Greg said, also then you've got that flexibility of then using Power Automate to do validations and checks and anything, pretty much kind of anything to your heart's desire on kind of through Power Automate.
Great. Few more great questions that came in. So Matthias asked, where is the forecast data stored? And I think that's a little bit that follows up the next question, where Mason had another question about the type of database. So the data is actually stored in an SQL database. So we're actually setting up the different, the different dimensions, the different tables in the same way that you would a Power BI model. And that's why this is able to work so seamlessly, this visual is, because it integrates well with a Power BI modeling, if you're familiar with that. But the data essentially is stored in a SQL database. So when we're actually changing these values here, that data is actually being, you're overriding that data to that specific scenario for the different filtering you have applied in that database.
Yeah, so and I think that's one of the beauties, and this is really where, if you've been working in the planning, forecasting, budgeting arena, your choices were these proprietary tools, some of the originals out there, the Hyperions, Cognos's, those big tools, big expensive tools. Then things moved along to cloud-built tools such as Adaptive and Planful and some of these other aspects. But really things have kind of, there's been a third wave recently with the ability now just to do it within kind of standard tools within Microsoft, basically. So some of the even though those tools, those original legacy tools were really powerful, really good in their day, think technology has moved along. You had to have a proprietary database, which was, on some other technology. You had to have a developer or a person that knew that technology to develop it further, to add new scenarios, that sort of thing. Now, all the person needs to know is understand Power BI, understand a little bit about SQL Server, and they're away to the races. So no specific knowledge in terms of the database. The logic you use is just normal Power BI DAX logic, and so obviously, the skill set bar has been reduced there. Also, by having it just in a SQL Server database, that's just part of the natural Microsoft ecosystem. And when you were deploying Power BI in an enterprise scale environment, there's a SQL table that's always available. So we're seeing a lot of organizations now saying, hey, we don't want to maintain or pay a lot of money for these proprietary tools which are outside of the Power BI environment. If we can do it all within Microsoft and within the Power BI ecosystem, then let's do that. And I think that's one of the major advantages. That was a very good question.
So Mason, Matthias, if that didn't answer your question, please let us know, and type another thing in the chat there. One thing I think that's also worth mentioning here is there's, what you've been seeing me do is just a simple, changing our actual values. These visuals actually have shortcuts associated with them as well, to where I can do, increase, decrease, all these different types of shortcuts that you're seeing on here. So let me show you exactly how that works. So if I just wanted to increase this by maybe 50%, I simply put this shortcut on there. Oops. Increase 50. And what's happened now is we can see that that amount has been increased by 50%. And again, our values have changed accordingly. And we could do the same thing by decreasing it by 75%.
And that's not just increase that particular value at that highest level. If you drill down to the most granular level of that data now, it's actually spread that value based upon the proportion below it. If it was all empty below it or zeros below it, it would just even it out. So that's full sort of top-down allocation, bottom-up allocation, middle-out type of allocation capability in these planning tools is available within Power BI. So you can really, it's a really powerful way of doing it. It's not just kind of entering a number and leaving it, or a number of numbers on a spreadsheet looking environment in Power BI. It's actually having those kind of higher end capabilities to do those allocations, spreading of data. Hey, we know this data needs to be spread with this sort of seasonality within our business. So using that logic and spreading it down. If you have a particular ML model that you've run and you've got a particular algorithm or standard algorithm that you're using against your data, you can again use that against again here. So you can have your sort of machine-led scenario forecast, 1, 2, 3s, or what the machine's predicting. Okay, let's have like a human forecast in there as well.
Awesome. All good stuff. So what I thought I'd do here is actually change up the screen to get you another kind of aspect to budgeting as well. So the last page we were on was more of a sales planning, for a retail client. What we're looking at here is just simple financial planning. So we have a simple P&L here in the middle. And what we can actually do here is actually.
Right.
I'm sorry, Darren, what was that?
Can't see a screen.
You cannot see the screen. Okay, I will try and share again. How about now?
Yep.
Great. Okay, so as I was saying, went to a different Power BI report to where this is now looking at more of a financial planning, and what we have here in the middle is our P&L, and what we're looking at is actuals versus budget, and then some variances associated with those. So in this instance, obviously our budget for revenue is set to $1,000. That's probably not typical, especially if our actuals are at 153,000. So I'll show you another way that we can utilize these custom visuals here that we've been looking at, and how you can actually change that. So in this instance, what I'm going to do is, again, another way to lay this out in a matrix format. But again, we're looking at more of our general ledger now instead of a sales territory. So I'm going to go ahead and change this to maybe increase that to 45,000. And I need to remember my steps. And as we've written that data back now, and I go back to my screen here on the front, we can now see that my budget has increased. Now this visual, again, I know I jump between pages. It's all how you want to lay out your Power BI report, right? Because it has flexibility. I could have kept that I could have had this on my revenue page where I can see it change instantly. We can have this on a dashboard type of approach. End of the day, the the whole concept is that we can plan and budget against all of these different areas. So not just revenue, but we can actually plan against our labor, to where if you have, let's say, for example, a bunch of different resources that you need to actually budget and plan against, I can do the same thing that I just did on my previous page with revenue for resources. So these could actually be employees inside your organization. Maybe you need to do increases, maybe you need to increase wages for a year. You can budget for that all from within these screens, and then see how that actually correlates to your P&L for that given year or that time frame.
Yeah, I think that's an important point you made, Greg. The layout is up to you. As you probably are familiar with now with Power BI, you can make a screen look however you want to make a screen, and this is exactly the same. So no more having to say, hey, you need to go to this page and enter it in this way and follow the tools process. Now you can say, okay, I want to have that budget entry portion on the left side. I want to have my other visual on the right top. I want to have a bar graph on the bottom right, and I want to have these filters across the top. So however you want to construct that, and you'll see that in a moment when Greg kind of creates one of these for you from scratch, you can really lay it out however you want to. And also that another important thing is adoption, So now you've got the ability to distribute this to as many people in the organizations as you want to. With traditional planning systems, especially Excel-based planning systems, very often finance or the people who have created that planning system keep it local to them because they don't want anyone breaking it. Okay, they don't want someone overwriting a macro or formula, something like that. So one of the great things here is that you can't break it. Once you publish it out to the service, people can come in with their security rights, enter the data. So you can get a much more holistic view of your organization from a planning and forecasting perspective, because they are actually entering their data. You're not doing it centrally for them. So you're saving time and effort and all the rest of it, but also they have ownership over that aspect of it as well. And then because you can exactly match and tailor the screens to look and feel and work however you wish it to, you'll probably, for finance, you'll probably have a fairly matrix, a fairly dull looking view, because that's what they want. For sales, they may want something a little bit more visually orientated. For marketing, you want to make it in a different fashion. So you could have kind of a number of different ways that the people can enter their forecasts and plans for the same forecast or plan, but it's exactly married to their requirements and their expectations. So that change management aspect, the adoption aspect is another really important thing that we are seeing.
One thing that I want to show everybody before we actually get into the Power BI desktop and show you how easy it is to utilize these visuals is I want to mention one more visual that we have on the screen here, and this is something called the dimension editor. Now, I don't want to get too far into the weeds with the technical side of things, but if you remember earlier, the reason this is so powerful because we're actually using the same data model that Power BI uses, our dimensions and our facts and creating those relationships. What the very powerful thing about our dimension editor is, let's say we're looking at labor planning and we know we're going to add, 5 more individuals to our firm, in March. So you want to add those 5 individuals, but you need to add them to your data model somehow. Well, this dimension editor allows you to do that. So you can see on here, we have resources 1 through 10. If I need to add 11 through 15, I just simply go in here and add those individuals, and it writes back those 5 more individuals to my dimension. So a very powerful tool that allows me to plan for, for example, on the human resource side for 5 individuals that may not be on my team yet. And then when they do come onto my team, they're in there, that all the plumbing is set up and everything works seamlessly. So another very beneficial way to start planning when you're looking at the HR side of things.
So this third aspect to this is critical and a really time consuming and worrying thing if you have done any planning before. So obviously you want to be able to enter the data. You obviously want to enter maybe commentary there. But also there's scenarios where you want to do some what if analysis or what if modeling of the data. So it's not the data that's you want to change, but it's the structure you want to change. So prime example, with COVID, nobody could see that coming, but we need to now plan for it. So you normally have your 5-year strategic plan, your annual budget, your monthly forecast, but now you want to run a middle of February 2020 COVID scenario. This, you could come into the scenario dimension here. So this is actually, not going to be used by everybody. It's going to be more kind of the power user or the admin of the tool. And you now face it with this visual, you can expose all of your dimensionality and your data model behind the scenes. And now also on the fly, with the relevant security rights, be able to add a brand new scenario on the fly or change something around, add a new grouping, and really do that sort of heavyweight modeling. And you don't need to know anything about SQL Server because this is adjusting SQL Server in the background. This is just basically giving a nice visual representation in Power BI to do what you wish. I think there's a quick question that's come in here. Maybe we should grab that, Greg. So what type of database or database connections are needed for this tool beyond the Acteris visual? Yeah, that's a good question. So so in terms of the database, as Greg mentioned too, it's just a SQL DB. That can be on your tenant in Azure. It can be on premise. In terms of the specifications of that, generally a minimum, if it's on the Azure cloud, a minimum of about 200 DTUs, if I remember rightly, Greg.
That's correct. Mm-hmm.
And then the beauty of it, there's no real kind of general specification because everybody's scenario is a little bit different. One thing I would say, it does handle data and this write-back calls and things like that very, very efficiently. So there's customers that we've seen who've been doing global forecasting, consolidation, multiple currencies, and hundreds, even getting up to thousands of users in the system, all planning and writing back at the same time. Really, at those planning times, all you do is up your sort of DTUs because it's around the capacity more than the kind of database side. The actual database is very, very small for these things. And you just up your capacity. And then obviously, if you're working on an on-prem environment, you just up your sort of on-prem specs for that as well. In terms of connections, there's a API between the visual that basically takes those write-back calls and puts it into the relevant place in SQL Server. And that, again, that API is a very small packet of information, and it can sit on your own Azure tenant, etc. So not many kind of, I guess, hardware or database necessities around it. Did I miss anything there, Greg?
No, I mean that's pretty well it. I mean it's a very simple platform, and it uses that SQL backend. And then of course, there's obviously a UI that you can get in there and actually set things up, and the UI is very user friendly. But at the end of the day, the majority of your work is done within the Power BI, desktop, where you're just setting up your visuals with your DAX equations, and then publishing it up to the service where your end users can actually analyze that data.
Yeah, and another point is if you've ever used any of those sort of legacy planning tools, your kind of TM1s, your Hyperions, that sort of thing, there's always technical or model database limits on them. So with certain tools, you get 15 dimensions, but only 12 are usable because the other 3 are used by the system, that sort of thing. That's eliminated here because you can have as many different dimensions as you wish to. Another problem with some of those legacy tools was that they were very fast because they were using particular cube technologies and things like that for calculations. This is all done within SQL Server using a lot of the latest SQL Server in-memory capabilities and things like that. So that scalability and that speed issue is now eliminated. So you're storing all of your data at the most granular level that you wish to in SQL Server. And if you want to scale that out, both in terms of data volumes, etc., it's as scalable as SQL Server is now, which is fairly infinite on that side. And then certainly in terms of speed, generally when this is set up correctly, and you should be getting kind of sub-second responses. So you enter some data, you see the answer coming straight back to you. There isn't kind of waiting for the Excel world wheel to turn and that sort of thing. Greg, you might be on mute.
Thank you. You guys, if there's any questions, please continue to have them in the chat. This is all great stuff. What I've done now is I've actually changed screens again and gone from the Power BI service, which is where we actually utilize the reporting and the planning visuals, and now actually to where we actually start building that, right? And I just kind of want to show you how easy it is to build, one of these visuals. So as you can see here on the screen, I have our simple revenue planning visual here, but it doesn't have any fields. So what it is I've just pulled in this simple custom visual onto the screen, but now I have to associate just my rows, my columns, and my values associated with this visual. And it's as easy as just going ahead and finding what I'm looking for. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to find my GL account. I'm going to pull my GL accounts into my rows, because that's usually how we want to actually visualize our, when we're looking at our, our budgets or our revenue or our cost, we want to look at it by GL account. And now for my columns, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go look for a scenario first. So I'm going to look at my scenario, which I can find my scenario dimension. I'm going to drag that into my column names. And then I'm going to go ahead and find my date dimension, which is month year here. And I can go ahead and just pull that in accordingly month, and then find my year and pull that over accordingly as well. So as that data comes in, and the last thing I want to do is I want to pull in the actual value that I'm going to be changing, and that's our amount value here in our amount fact table. As that data loads in, you're going to simply see how we've recreated just by adding those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different fields from here, and now we can see exactly what we had in the Power BI service. So again, a real simple way, just like all your other Power BI visuals, you're dragging and dropping those items into here, and it's just showing you exactly these values as we had in before. Any questions with what I had there? And the same, but while I do that, if you have any questions, same thing with the comments visual. That can be done in the same way, shape, or form. I'm just going to go ahead and for my columns, I'm going to pull in the month year name here. Then I'm going to find my scenario one more time for my pivot. And then for my comment, so this is actually done in our fact table as well, but we're pulling in the actual text value field, which is actually where we write our comments to. And now you can see again, we have the same visualization that we had on there before. This is going to give us the ability to actually write back our comments. So, any questions with what we put on the screen here? Darren, anything to add on your side?
Not at this stage. There's one question where you can find the visual. So if you go to the Power BI marketplace, you'll be able to find it there. It's called Thurs. We'll also send a link to it in the follow-up email with the video. Everything, all the recordings for this will be emailed to you after the session.
Yep, and then these visuals are usually, just like all the other visuals, they're updated, monthly. So always coming out with the latest features so that, as Power BI comes out with more features like they do every month, these visuals, get that functionality added to them as well. Yeah,
and I'd really encourage you to have a look at the marketplace because there's so many, visuals there, new visuals. So obviously, the mainstays are here with that Microsoft provide, and there's of course releasing new ones into the product, but I stopped counting in terms of the numbers of visuals a little while ago because there's literally everything that you can find out there.
Any questions? I know there's a lot more. I mean, I'm sure there's got to be some burning questions in everyone's mind here, but it's got to be something. I stopped sharing. I switched my screen again. I want to show one more thing. But I just want to show the data model here. So if you're familiar with data modeling in Power BI, this is how simple it is, guys. So there's no rocket science going on behind the scenes. It's a simple data model to where we have, two different fact tables, and then our dimensions are located across the top. And these dimensions and these facts are what enable us to pretty well write back in the strategic fashion we are. So, if you're wanting to budget against a project, if you want to budgeting against a GL account, budgeting against a resource, like employees, a certain time of the year, so a month, a year, a quarter, that's what all of these dimensions are used for. And then as you can see, they're all related back to these two fact tables that we can actually write back. So a lot of cool stuff here. So any questions you have, just let us know, and happy to answer them.
Okay. I don't see any other questions coming in. Did you have anything else you wanted to show, Greg?
As far as the budgeting and planning, actually, I do want to show one more thing. Yep. So another thing that I think is definitely worth mentioning is the Excel feature that it comes with this. So I always forget about this because we're always so focused with Power BI. So the one thing that Acteris also has to offer is it has an Excel add-in. So many of us in the in the finance world, it really doesn't matter what division you're in. Everybody uses Excel, right? And what Acteris has realized is that there is an actual benefit to still using Excel. So they created something called the Excel add-in. And what this actually allows you to do is actually allows you to connect up to that actual database that we've actually been writing back to. So, in conjunction with the Power BI visuals, is we actually now have this add-in inside of Power BI here that allows you to essentially write back. So I've actually already connected to the same database that I've been showing everyone here. But what I can do is I can edit my dimensions from within Excel, because sometimes individuals are just so accustomed to using it, it's just easier to stay with inside of this platform. So if I actually click on this edit dimension icon up here, you can now see I have all of these different dimensions that are available to me that I can actually edit. So if I click on dim scenario and say okay, you can see here are all my different scenarios, and I can actually add or delete these scenarios from within inside of this page. The other key piece to this, let's say I don't need to edit a dimension. Let's say I actually need to seed my budget, right? So maybe it's the beginning of 2021 and I need to upload the full year budget, or maybe I'm starting off with a completely new division and that budget needs loaded in. So if you need to start from scratch, we can actually do that by using something called bulk upload. And if I do a bulk upload, all right, if I do a bulk upload sheet, I just select a cube. So maybe I'm uploading that to my manufacturing cube, right? I select that, and now I can load in all the different elements that are needed here inside of this fact table, essentially, that we're writing back to. So whatever that value is by my facility, my product, my scenario, etc. And then I can go ahead and commit those changes. And what that's going to do is that's going to bulk upload my budget for the entire year or whatever period I'm choosing. So again, it's just a very simple platform to use to load in your budget, to change things, and they give the ability to do that here from within Excel. Darren, anything to add with that?
Yeah, that's a good point, because I completely forgot that as well. So you're never going to change the world in one day. So most organizations are, for planning and forecasting, are still working in Excel. I think this is a great change management agent as well. So if you're going down the Power BI route and kind of the end goal is, hey, let's do all of our budget forecasts in Power BI as well, this is a nice stepping stone, but also to bring some of those folks, especially the guys who created the spreadsheets in the first place, and maybe often those folks are in finance, along for the ride as well. So as Greg mentioned to you, whether you're entering data, so you could create, for example, that budget entry screen that you saw in Power BI, you could recreate it here. But the advantage of doing it here through this environment is that it's not writing, it's not storing the data structure and logic in Excel. It's storing all of that in your back-end architecture, so your Power BI model and things like that. So you've still got that single version of truth for your budgeting, planning, and forecasting. So whether you're working in Excel, whether you're working in Power BI, it's all real time, and you can see, you know, everything changing. Everybody's working off the one number, a single version of truth, single version of calculation. And then often, you know, what we see is that, you know, maybe the majority of organization has transitioned to entering their budgets and forecasts through Power BI, but then there's still some hangers-on who want to use Excel. You can give them back Excel, but it's more in that sort of controlled environment where, you know, it's not kind of Excel on their C drive. This is Excel kind of, and all the power and flexibility of it, but within the system that you've created for them. So this is a really useful thing to kind of bring that change. You know, Rome wasn't built in a day, but you know, Excel started it. So that's a very important point when we're talking about the planning and budgeting environment. Any more questions? So we've got about 5 minutes left here. If there's any more questions, we can answer them now. Of course, you know, Greg and the rest of the team are here available for anything that you think about later on as well. If there's no more questions, maybe if there's anything else, Greg, we can give 5 minutes back to everybody.
I don't see any other questions. If there are questions, you know, feel free to reach out to us. I'm sure this is a lot to take in, especially if you weren't aware that this is, you know, a possibility. I think it's extremely powerful because, like I said, Power BI it's a great visualization tool, but giving you the ability to now actually write back from within Power BI as well, and, you know, perform that budget plan, different scenarios, I think is extremely powerful. So if you guys have any questions at all, feel free to reach out. I think the last thing I'll just add is, you know, thanks for everyone for attending. If you're enjoying these sessions, like I said, these are happening every Thursday. Next week, we're having another one of these on Data Modeling 101. So if you're still a little confused with data modeling, make sure you join us next week, same time, same bat channel, as my dad would say. So, yeah, so if you're interested, Data Modeling 101 next week, and just appreciate everyone's time here today.
Thanks a lot, everyone.